Sorry. Hi, folks. Once again, welcome to day 2 of the EWP Student Symposium. This morning, today we're going to have panels 3 and 4, and this morning I'm introducing panel 3, and I will moderate panel 4. Panel 3 is on our Earth quadrant, and the title of the panel is Self and Earth Bodies, and it's going to be moderated by Adrian Villasenor-Galarza, who is new faculty in East-West Psychology. Good morning, Adrian. Jonathan will monitor the time. The speakers will each have 20 minutes to speak, and Jonathan will jump in at about 5 minutes. Please don't be startled, to just let you know that you've approached the 5-minute mark to end the talk. And after each of the 3 speakers has a chance to give their presentations, then Adrian will offer reflections and open for Q&A. Have I missed anything, Jonathan? Okay, so without further ado, Adrian, you can take the helm.
Hi, thank you, Steph. Hi, Jonathan. Good morning, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. Anshul, it's good to see you here after some time. Yeah. So yeah, thank you to Jonathan and Steph and everybody for organizing this. Let's get it going. So our first panelist is Anshul. I'm gonna read his abstract and what he has to offer for us today: integral agriculture. In this presentation, I would like to explore the ideas of food, farming, agriculture, and their relationships with each other. I will also explore how our engagement with growing our food could play a role in shifting the paradigms of learning from that of knowing to those of being. Based on these ideas, I will introduce a vision of integral agriculture for a deeper contemplation on our relationship with the self, society, and ecology. This exploration is an attempt to evoke questions such as, beyond producing food, can farming help us shift the paradigms of learning which can prepare us to respond to the crisis of this time? In this age of individualism, what kind of social systems could sustain a new agriculture society? What role can food play in activating a higher consciousness in individuals and the collective? These inquiries lead us to the recognition of the intricate links between agriculture and our social structures, and that in an integral view of agriculture, the farmer and the collective are not separate entities. I will discuss the relationship of working with the soil and the human soul, and the need for preparation of both for the seeds of the future. This will help us to extend the goal of farming to not only nourishment of the physical bodies, but also our aspirations for a higher life, working as a catalyst for individual, social, and ecological transformation. As we put these ideas in perspective and come up with contextual solutions for our communities, we would need a synthesis of the physical and the invisible aspects of agriculture. Here, I take inspiration from Sri Aurobindo's vision of integral yoga and extend it to agriculture in attempting to discover what integrality means when working with the land, with each other, and growing food as a service to humanity and all life. This journey would finally lead us to a vision of integral agriculture. These observations emanate from work of over 8 years with soil, food, and traditional farming communities in North India, South India, and North Colombia. In my quest to learn how I could grow my food, I found myself asking deeper questions about our relationship with nature and other beings, and realized that I needed to grow myself to be able to grow food, good food, not only for myself, but for a larger purpose of evolution of consciousness. This presentation would be a humble attempt to share what I have learned on the way. The presentation of this work will be done using a simple hand sketch images based on natural and cosmic patterns. So finally, a little bit about Anshul. Anshul Aggarwal joined the Masters of Art in East-West Psychology at CIS in 2023, this year. He's a farmer and soil biologist and lives with his wife in Aurobindo, India. Anshul has worked in different farming communities in India and has been researching the intersections of food, ecology, society, and consciousness. Nice. Anshul, welcome. Do we need to do something about for you to share the screen, or it's good to go?
Thank
Good
you,
to go.
Adrian. Yeah, I think
Should be good.
Mm,
Yes, there we go. That's looking good.
yeah.
Yep, you got it.
Even better. There you go.
Hmm. So, good evening, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, first of all, Jonathan, Adrian, Stefan, for organizing the symposium. And it's a pleasure to be sharing this space with you all and to be sharing with you the work that I have been doing in the last few years. I will share with you today about integral agriculture, a vision for a kind of agriculture that I feel is not only required, but is at the basis for a new future of humanity, especially as a response to the growing crises around food, farming, and communities in the world. I will pause for 15 seconds or so at every new slide so that you have some time to read and absorb the image. So first, let us understand what I mean by integral. I borrowed this term and its meaning from the Indian sage and philosopher Sri Aurobindo. Talking about integral human being, he says, integrality is his destination. Man is only a half-disclosed form of the divine. That is why he's traveling towards divine integrality. In this human bud hides the fullness of the divine lotus, and it is the endeavor of nature to bring it into blossom gradually and slowly. So we can view integrality as the highest becoming of the human being, the flowering of their various aspects and parts into their divine nature. Now, a human being is a complex of several layers. The Indian yoga system describes the 5 koshas or bodies of the human being. The Annamaya kosha, the physical, Pranamaya, the etheric, Manomaya, the mental, Vijnanamaya, the intellectual, and Anandamaya, the blissful body. The yogis of ancient India have elaborated on several yoga pathways, Hatha Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, so on and so forth, suited to the temperaments, abilities, and challenges of the aspirants, and to work on different aspects of human life. Sri Aurobindo looks at the scheme of the human complex a bit differently. His philosophy of integral yoga synthesizes the aspiration of physical, vital, and mental perfection, what you can see here on the vertical plane, and of psychic and spiritual perfection that you can see in the concentric planes. To reach our destination of integrality, therefore, we need a tool that helps us cultivate all these aspects of our nature. My research began with the realization that agriculture is an effective tool for self-actualization. Connecting with the soil can help us better understand ourselves and the world we find ourselves in. Farming embodies change and transformation. The transformation of a humble seed into a spectacular plant that attracts various beings towards itself for food, to serve the larger purposes of pollination and dispersal of seeds, a necessary step in the propagation and evolution of life. At the same time, seasons change, life in the soil changes, and even the animals, birds, and insects around the plant change in due time. To farm is to observe these changes and learn to work with them in order to serve the most basic human necessity, food and nutrition. Working with nature requires us to be present in its continuous unfolding, impels us to drop our insistence on wanting to know, and gives us the gift of learning to be. Being with nature engages us physically, vitally, and mentally, and cultivates us psychically and spiritually. In being, we are led to discover the freedom of becoming our integral selves. The word agriculture literally means the culture of the land. It is a culture that is based on and springs forth from the land. In this sense, agriculture is inherently an overlap of the ecology of the land, that is, the many relationships of nature, environment, animals, birds, soil, microorganisms, the sociology of the community that gives rise to such a culture and engages with the ecology, and the psychology of the individual, which sustains this culture and participates in its evolution. The evidence of the profound concept of integrality, in fact, comes from nature itself. Life, if you look closely, is deeply interconnected and assimilates a rich diversity within itself. Therefore, to discover what integral means for society and agriculture, we must look no more beyond what exists already around us. Our challenge has been that our philosophy of knowing is based solely on the mental apparatus and considers knowledge as a cognitive commodity. To learn more and know more, we depend on the ability of our mind to discern, analyze, and remember. But we often fail to recognize the limited framework of rationality within which the mind operates, and therefore miss out on some of the finer and invisible nuances of what we see. This is natural, as the mind must divide a whole to make sense of it, and it makes us believe that reality is divided. Nature and life, however, remain inherently indivisible and integral. When we start seeing life as it is, a whole web of relationships and flows of energy, we can dissolve the mental distinctions between land, people, and society. From such a view of life emerges the vision of an integral agriculture, a culture of integrality of its ecology, sociology, and individual psychology, which also works as a tool for the manifestation of integrality of human nature. In order to delve deeper into this vision, let us understand a bit more about our relationship with food. The story of food is a slow-cooked potage of several ingredients. We know that the early humans obtained their food by hunting and gathering in the wild. As this involved moving constantly, the organization around family units was simple and social structures were impermanent due to high mortality. Humans survived and thrived in this way for about 1,000,000 years. Farming, which started only about 10,000 years ago, brought a dramatic change. It solidified the social concepts by grounding the family units in one place, thus giving rise to the ideas of ownership and succession. A sedentary life and a growing population made social systems more complex, and thus people invented new roles to sustain the family organism, leading to the birth of a new culture based on land, agriculture. Nikolai Vavilov, the Russian agronomist of the early 20th century, worked out 4 centers of early agriculture based on the current biodiversity of food crops present in these regions. These were the Andes in South America for potato, Central America and Mexico for corn, the Middle East for wheat, China and India for rice and millet. In the 10,000 years of agriculture, it spread across the world, adapted to different climates and cultures of people. The cultivated crops kept diversifying with seeds traveling from one place to the other, and agriculture evolved with the improvement of skills and tools of the farmers. Farming became a way of life, a way of working with nature and with each other in the community. Then came the Green Revolution in the 1960s, which took a strong hold on the land and our collective imagination. The Green Revolution was a response to a post-World War II world, trying to build back the world and feed the growing hungry population, especially in the third world countries, coming out of centuries of colonial rule and exploitation. The agriculture paradigm also had to keep pace with the changing industrial and economic paradigms. More and more farmers were asked to let go of their indigenous seed diversity and grow developed varieties of only staple crops with the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. Farming became a manufacturing process requiring several inputs, one after the other, and food alone was its output. This not only impacted the values of the associations with land and food, but by extension, it also impacted social relations and the culture of the land. Land was now seen as a resource for maximum production, and technology and heavy machinery appeared to make it possible. After almost 6 decades of the promise of the Green Revolution to feed the world, food, or the lack of it, has become one of the many complicated challenges of the 21st century. Despite our growing economies and technologies, world hunger is also growing. While 1 out of 7 people in this world is starving or undernourished, interestingly, 1 in every 7 people is also obese. It is not a bold conclusion to say that problem of hunger is not about the availability of food. While some people grow up in scarcity, some others grow up in an unhealthy abundance. This lopsided global distribution of resources in general, and food in particular, is the root cause of our failing health, either due to the lack of food or because of too much of it. Even though many people around the world are waking up with the destruction that monocropping and large-scale mechanization in farming has caused, some still believe that it is the only way to produce high yields. And even more advanced technologies like genetic modification must be utilized if we are to ever solve the challenge of feeding the world. Interestingly though, over 70% of the food that we eat comes from farms smaller than 25 acres, managed by communities and families for subsistence, and not from large mechanized monocrop systems as we are made to believe. Also, small farms are 4 to 5 times more productive than large farms because of their intensive diverse cropping integrated with animal rearing. The industrialization of farming has led to large-scale disempowerment of small farmers, degraded rural lands and culture, and polluted our soil, water, and air. In this paradigm, the poor stay hungry no matter how much food is produced on this planet. Our emphatic stress is on strategies and policies to feed the world and focused only on producing more food, while completely forgetting or ignoring the qualities of the food. As the world wakes up to appreciate the subtle nuances of relationships of humans with nature, with other humans, and within themselves, the subtle qualities of food and the relationship with the human health must also be considered and appreciated. As a global collective, feeding the world population is rather an insufficient objective. That all on this planet should have access to clean and wholesome food of the highest vibration could be an idea worth aspiring for. We seek food to keep our bodies alive because the nature of food is exactly that of our own body. Just as our body has physical and subtle aspects, food too has physical and subtle fields emanating from the source of the food and from the process used to transform it for consumption. Different sources of food and from the process used to transform it, different sources of food and the way the food was grown, handled, and cooked lead to differing results in nutrition, flavor, and energy of the food. In reality, however, food is still considered a commodity, and we are content with its physical and chemical nature. In an integral view of agriculture, there is recognition of the subtle qualities of food and an acknowledgement of its role in activating a higher consciousness in individuals and the collective. The paradigm of agriculture is also changing socially in many ways. On one side, we see a rise in the trend of people moving from agriculture to an urban culture. The degradation of rural life and ecosystems has forced people to migrate to already densely populated cities with the hope of employment and a better life. The move from a village to a city is not only physical, but it's also a psychological leap from a collective to an individual identity. Families are also not as big as they used to be once, and as large families break into smaller nuclei, there are fewer hands on the agricultural fields. Mechanization has helped in this regard to some extent, but this has also disturbed the long-held balance of self-reliance in agricultural communities. On the other hand, people tired of a degenerative city life are moving to rural areas in search of a simple life and with an aspiration of connecting with nature. Thus, we see a flow of people in both directions, but with very different skills, temperaments, and aspirations. The future of agriculture stands between the traditional farmers, some of whom are tired of the ecological and social pressures, while only some have the resources to experiment with a different way, and the newly educated aspirant wanting to go back to the land, but with very little experience and almost no skills in working on the land, caught in a tight balancing act of individual growth and collective prosperity. The sustainability of agriculture is not only about ecology. We must ask ourselves, who will grow our food in the future?
Anshul, 4.5 minutes.
And while we may be turning towards farming, we are still far from agriculture. Farming is an activity of intentionally shaping one's natural environment to grow plants that are desirable for one's food or other basic needs. But agriculture is a culture of the land which springs forth from farming. It evolves on the foundations of how humans work on the land and with each other, and how social life organizes itself around the activity of farming. Therefore, while farming could represent an individual, agriculture essentially represents a social unit. The agriculture of the future cannot dismiss the society without which there will be no culture. This future of agriculture demands not only a new way of farming, but a new way of social organization, of people coming together spontaneously or by design, forming families and communities to support each other and to help dream and realize this task, which is beyond an individual. This coming together of people for a purpose and not social obligation would require a new ethical framework beyond religion and dogma. The first condition of farming is a natural fraternity, which alone could lead to the empowerment of the future farm and farmer. The psychological well-being of an individual within a healthy social life also exists in relationship with the wider natural world. Communities based on land and in forests have evolved with their ecosystems for millennia. Not only have humans evolved within the ecosystems, but they have also contributed to protecting and furthering the evolution of these systems. The Amazon forest, for example, which is now being referred to as the oldest food forest, shows clearly how human culture can support and enhance biodiversity and create a synthesis of wild and humanized ecosystems. The farmer has a responsibility of deciding the extent of modification of environment for human needs, assessing the impact of this modification on the environment and other beings, and possibly offsetting this impact by positively enhancing the environment and accelerating natural healing processes. Besides food, the farmer grows soil, water under the ground, and a rich micro and macro life, all of which support a healthy food production system. This work of humans to participate in the betterment of life, not just human life, but social and ecological life as well, is the cornerstone of an integral agriculture. In the integral view of agriculture, the role of the farmer is not restricted to growing food. The soil is cultivated to cultivate the human soul, the nourishment of food not limiting itself to the physical bodies, but also nourishing our aspirations for a higher life, working as a catalyst for individual, social, and ecological transformation. Our work then is to discover a new way of farming and eating, a way of sustaining and even enhancing planetary and human health. Farming thus becomes a service to humanity and all life, and agriculture a means for transformation of world consciousness. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshul. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your thoughts. And I recall reading some of those and an email, a couple that you sent. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We'll get going, and I'm looking forward for the time we'll have at the end of the 3 presentations to have a good conversation. All right. So let's see here. Yeah. So now I'm gonna introduce. I apologize beforehand if I misspell your name. Hemalata Swaminathan.
Swaminathan. Yeah.
Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about Hemalata, a dual master's degree holder in organizational and counseling psychology. Hemalata is a psychologist and creative art therapist who practices in Chennai, India. Being from a dance and theater background, she has always been passionate about art and its ability to connect to the deeper conscious. She's an award-winning theater performer and playwright, performing in national and international theater festivals. Her visual poetry has been published in the Yata newsletter regularly. More on her work and paper presentations available on her website or the number within.com. So she's going to present to us today the landscape of the soul connecting to the nature archetype. But let me just share briefly what she's going to have to say for us. India, a land where man rose with the sun, set out to till his land and returned with the setting of the sun. The day was spent sowing, caring for, and nurturing the crops. It was believed that as one cared for the land, one cared for oneself. Agriculture was the main source of livelihood for Indians till a few decades ago. With industrialization and capitalism, the amount of time one spent on one's land became lesser and lesser. As we lost touch with our land, we lost touch with ourselves, our souls. My ancestors had lands that they had cared for and tended to. The land was worshipped as divine, and rituals were conducted to honor the earth. These invocations were meant to make the individual a reflection of the myriad enduring relationships of the landscape. Since industrialization in the 1940s in India, the last 4 generations have lost their connection to the land, nature, and our soul. In this paper, she'll share her conversations with nature and how it helped her understand herself better. Jung emphasizes on the need to engage with the parts that emerge from the unconscious by playing with imagination. John talks about the experience of being touched by the soul of an animal or the soul of the earth as being united with the deepest part of the collective unconscious. He says that one, quote, one must see what the underlying trend is, what the will of God is, end of quote. So if one wanted to analyze what an image meant to them personally, one would have to analyze, engage, and form a relationship with that image. The archetypal image of a bed of grass and what it helped me learn about my unconscious. Her unconscious is the crux of this presentation. All right, welcome.
Thank you, Adrian, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so happy to be here to present my work, which came together in Professor Craig's class in the fall of 2022, when I was taking his class on Jung and nature. I could put together several sketches that I had made over 2 years, and it helped me understand and create a narrative of personal growth as I reflected on these sketches. So I'm really happy to share that today, and I'll begin with sharing screen. I hope you can see the full slide. Okay. The landscape of the soul connecting to the nature archetype through art. It's my privilege to present this today as I put it together in Professor Craig's class in the fall of 2022. Nature must not win the game, but cannot lose. This quote by Swiss psychologist Carl Jung highlights the idea that while humanity may strive to control and dominate nature, ultimately nature will always prevail. He believed that this was an important reminder for individuals to connect with the natural world and respect its power. He also recognized the importance of nature as a source of inspiration and healing for the human psyche, and believed that spending time in nature and connecting with the natural world could help individuals find a sense of peace and harmony within themselves. Nature can be a source of beauty and wonder, which can stimulate our imagination and help us create music, art, and literature. Connecting and reflecting on the nature archetype can be a powerful way to tap into the natural world's wisdom and beauty, leading to increased well-being and creativity. It is not uncommon for humans to find patterns in nature, as we are naturally drawn to the beauty and complexity of the natural world. Archetypes, on the other hand, refer to universal symbols and patterns that are present in the collective unconscious of humans, as described by Hume. The nature archetype, in particular, represents our connection to the natural world and our primal instincts. In his writings, Hume often used natural symbols and motifs to illustrate psychological concepts and ideas. Overall, Hume saw nature as a powerful force that could both challenge and inspire the human psyche, and he believed that it was essential for individuals to cultivate a relationship with the natural world. If one's images are evocative of the nature archetype, it could mean that they tap into this deep-seated human connection to the natural world. In the psychology of Carl Jung, the psyche is composed of the conscious mind, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is a theoretical construct that includes the universal patterns, symbols, and archetypes that are shared by all humans across cultures and time periods. One of these archetypes is the nature archetype, which represents our connection to the natural world and our primal instincts. According to Hume, the psyche is connected to the nature archetype through the collective unconscious. This means that the nature archetype is a part of the collective heritage of all humans, and that it is present in the unconscious mind of every person. Hume believed that the nature archetype could have a profound influence on the individual psyche, affecting everything from our moods and emotions to our thoughts and behaviors. By connecting with the nature archetype, individuals may be able to tap into this powerful source of wisdom and insight, leading to greater self-awareness and personal growth. Overall, the nature archetype is an important aspect of the collective unconscious, and connecting with it can have profound effects on the individual psyche. In this paper, I would like to share how creating the recurring image of the nature archetype through art has helped me feel grounded and centered by reminding me of my connection to the natural world. This was especially helpful in times of stress or uncertainty, as it provided a sense of stability and perspective. In my homeland, India, we believe that as one cares for the land, one cares for oneself. We worship the land as divine, and rituals were conducted to honor the earth. Until a few decades ago, agriculture had been the main source of livelihood for Indians. With industrialization, the amount of time we spent on the land decreased. I sincerely thank Alpika Kumar and Tushya, who gave us a detailed account of this phenomena in their presentation last evening in panel 2. Farming and growing one's food began to be considered a lesser job, while sitting in cubicles came to be seen as more important and futuristic. As we lost touch with our land, we lost touch with ourselves, our spirit. I have grown up at a time in India where people have forgotten their connection to the land. With industrialization, generations have lost this connection to their nature and soul. Agriculture is predominantly practiced only in the rural areas, and technology keeps the urban dwellers busy. As we progress, ignoring the need for deep emotional bonds with the environment, there is a growing awareness that not all is well with the earth and its urbanized dwellers who began to experience an environmental despair. This is a word that was coined for this destructive loop of alienation by Buddhist and systems theorist Joanna Macy. I live in this urban India, built of narrow lanes, clustered houses, hardworking people who have no time to look outside the window and soak in the sun. In this presentation, I'd like to share a story in pictures. These pictures are sketches made by me at different points of time from 2020, and that came together in Professor Craig's class. They speak of the soul's journey as it connects to the nature archetype. Meaning making in research has predominantly been through what people say or what people do. Hence, most researchers' observations are based on words. However, people do not make meaning only in words. Arts have been a very important tool of expression and meaning making since centuries. In the new millennium, the importance of arts-based research is gaining momentum, and researchers have begun to use this in their research at different stages or as the primary methodology. Nature-based expressive arts is the use of nature in making works of art that enable one to express oneself. One valuable technique of nature-based expressive arts is the use of metaphors drawn from nature. Using metaphor as it connects with the natural world is both a nature-based practice as well as an expressive arts practice. Peter Hoover, student of ACTS, mentioned earlier in the symposium last evening about the ability of art to make us pause and reflect. Reflecting on an image through art has been a powerful way to explore my thoughts and emotions. There are many ways to use art to reflect on an image. One approach is to create a painting or drawing that captures the essence of the image. This could involve exploring the colors, the texture, the shape of the image, as well as any emotions or feelings that it evokes. One could also experiment with different styles or techniques to create a unique and personal interpretation of the image. The story begins with this image that came up for me sometime during COVID when the world was experiencing isolation. This image is the pain and sorrow that I experienced in my body as I heard stories of my clients and stories from around the world, and also experienced some personal stories of illness and uncertainties. There were a lot of responsibilities, and I had been just running from one task to another without paying heed to what my body was feeling till this image asked to be sketched. This image helped me to connect with what I was feeling deep within. Words that I associated to this image are disconnection, sorrow, and a heavy heart. In this image, I cannot experience outdoors, and that makes me shrivel within. Slowly, my resources to keep myself nourished are running out, and I become a bundle rolling away from one task to another, from one client to another. There are no hand, feet, body, or heart. Everything is lost in this rolling. Reflecting on the similarity of colors used in image 1, like if you can see in the heart region, a lot of green and yellow that's used in the first image, and the same yellow and green that it seems like a zoomed in, to me, it seems like a zoom into the heart image. It appears that deep within the heart, there is a seed that is waiting for the right conditions to sprout and grow. There is a deep layer to the human psyche that is waiting to be discovered and nurtured. In the psychology of Hume, this seed of potential might be thought of as the individual's unique purpose or destiny, which is embedded within the collective unconscious. Hume believed that each person has a unique path to follow, and this path is often revealed through dreams, symbols, and other forms of unconscious communication. To discover and nurture this need of potential, individuals may need to engage in self-reflection, introspection, and personal growth. By going deeper into the heart and connecting with this seed of potential, I have been able to find greater meaning and purpose in my life. The nature archetype that has been recurring for me is a bed of grass. Archetypes are typical ways of perceiving the world and responding to it, typical forms of feelings, ideas, attitudes, and tendencies to produce certain types of images. What does this landscape want to convey to me? As I ask myself this question, I'm challenged by Leslie to rethink the use of the word landscape. She contends in her chapter, Landscape History and Pablo Imagination, that the word landscape, as used in English, is misleading. It gives us the impression that humans are viewing a scape from the outside. That does not describe the relationship we have with our surrounding. Hence, I'd like to ask myself, what is the spirit I share with this bed of grass? At first, I do not understand it, as I see it as different from me. I see it outside myself. We are all part of the mother. Parallel to Wincott's notion that there is no baby without the mother is the reality that there is no person without the earth. A rock, animals, sand, clay, humans, all of us have a spirit. The spirit may differ in each one of us, yet we all emerge from the depths of the earth, which is our connection. Hume emphasizes on the need to engage with the parts that emerge from the unconscious by playing with imagination. He talks about the experience of being touched by the soul of an animal or the soul of the earth as being united with the deepest part of our collective unconscious. How can my human mind make meaning of how this bed of grass is related to my current life? Hume here cautions us to remember that nature is inhuman and needs a human mind to navigate and understand its relevance to the self. So if one wanted to analyze what an image meant to them personally, one would have to analyze, engage, and form a relationship with that image. How can I step into this landscape? Or how can this landscape become a part of me, so I am not the viewer and it is not the viewed? As I ask myself this question, I am reminded of the imaginary game that Hume played while seated on a stone. He asked himself if he was sitting on the stone and imagined what if the stone had a response too. Hume would not have engaged in this imaginary game if he had not believed the stone to have a spirit. Through this process, he established that every stone, rock, and animal on this earth is connected to each other. So am I the viewer or am I being viewed? Every landscape has a soul, a particular character. What impression does one get of the total landscape? Does it feel dry and barren, rugged and challenging, or lush and nurturing? One then analyzes the individual elements. My bed of grass felt soft and satin-like. It felt like it could hold me and relax every muscle in my body, but I hesitate to fall into it. I close my eyes and imagine the bed of grass in my body. It takes up space in the lower half of my body, my legs. They are exhausted. They carry the burden of appearing strong all the time and ache to relax. I let the image guide me further. Eventually, the ball unfolds and takes shape. Landscapes appear in the body. There are mountains that emerge on the bed of grass. There appears a waterfall that flows down the mountains to nourish the grasslands, and in the center appears a trident. The trident felt strong and supportive as the ball took shape. Arising from the gut, it traveled to the chest. I heard the bed of grass whisper, I appear soft and tender, but I can hold mountains and carry waterfalls. If we analyze the mountains as a symbol of masculine and the waterfalls as the symbol of feminine, the bed of grass seemed capable and ready to hold both these energies. The trident being the symbol of Shiva and Shakti, the embodiment of the masculine and the feminine. It was time to see who I could be if I allowed myself to make space for this bed of grass. I see this bed of grass as an archetype of strength, peace, belonging, and beauty. By beauty, we do not mean beautifying adornments, decorations. It is the way in which gods touch our senses, reach the heart, and attract us into life. This bed of grass was calling out to me to be alive again. I was living in denial, convincing myself that I needed to be stiff and rigid to keep the work going. I was tapping into my masculine energy and denying myself the experience of the feminine. My legs had turned to concrete, just like the homes we live in. I began to eventually understand how the bed of grass was viewing me. It said, "You're becoming concrete, like cement-like, in your run to fulfill your responsibilities." For the sake of mental stability and even physiological health, the unconscious and the conscious must be integrated and thus move on parallel lines. If they are split apart or disassociated, psychological disturbance follows. I desired to embrace the masculine and the feminine. The grass has traveled to the upper parts of my...
Sorry, just 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, sure, then I'm done. The grass has traveled to the upper parts of my body and my chest. The arms turn green, probably symbolic of green hands that seek to nurture and care for the earth that cares for us. The clouds in the background imply that the universe is willing to nourish the body and keep it alive. The image has elements of water and soil that emerge as symbols of masculine and feminine energies that are important resources for the grass to grow and branch out into this world. The archetype of nature is often associated with the feminine energy, which is nurturing, receptive, and intuitive. In contrast, the masculine energy is often associated with strength, action, and logic. By connecting with the nature archetype through art, I have gained a great appreciation for the feminine energy and its importance in achieving balance in life. This helped me recognize the need to be receptive and intuitive in certain situations rather than always relying on action and logic. Additionally, exploring the nature archetype through art helped me tap into my own creativity and intuition, which helped me find new and innovative solutions to problems. Overall, connecting with the nature archetype through art can be a transformative experience that helps us find balance and harmony in our lives by recognizing and honoring both our masculine and feminine energies. Today, as I was making this presentation, I would like to go back to image 2 and say that this image appeared to resemble the trapped masculine and feminine energy. And this is how the process of reflection through art occurs in me. It is dynamic, and there is always a new understanding, a new meaning that arises every time I pause and reflect on the art. I'd like to go back to where I left. Jung speaks of nature as an inner guide that comes when we connect to the earth. I'm glad that the archetypal pattern of the bed of grass guided me in understanding patterns within me. Hereon, I believe that caring for the land will connect me more to myself and to people who cared for the land before me, my ancestors. In this image, the eyes do not shed tears anymore. They watch over me as I connect to nature, to my soul and the soul of the universe. I hope my presentation has in some way answered Peter Hoover's question that he put across in his presentation in I think last evening, sorry for the time zone difference, on how we can take care of the earth that takes care of us. That was his question. Like, how can we take care of the earth that takes care of us? And I felt that we can do that by listening to it. The way most of the presentations today have woven into each other by focusing on mind-body integration, integration with nature or integration with the divine have surprised me. I thank the department for creating this platform for exchange of ideas that has enriched my understanding of my topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well done. That's wonderful. Hemlata, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your art. It tends to be something, very intimate, and I love how you amplified that and shared it with us. Great. So we'll move along for the final presentation. Kathy? 1 second, sweetie. I'm working. Okay?
Can you teach it or no?
Yes. Hold on. So Kathy, let me here I have a sweet visitor. So Kathy Stanley, MA, is an artist, ecopsychology educator, and senior adjunct lecturer in the School of Undergraduate Studies at CIS, where she teaches the classes Listening to Earth, Ecology, Art, and Spirit of Place, the Art of the Essay, and Reading into Writing. She's a PhD student in the East West Psychology Department, and you can find her at her website, sacredartjourneys.com. So her presentation today, that's entitled Sacred Art, an auto-ethnographic journey to the ecological self. So a little bit of what she has in store for us. Through art, women are recovering the ancient fabric of wholeness, of non-duality, of unity, of spirit and body, nature and culture, life and death, man and woman. Like the shaman of prehistoric and primal peoples, they are drawing on the forces of nature to heal. While modeled on the archetypal, new art comes out of a contemporary consciousness of a historical past and a very personal, vulnerable present. They understand the imperative for new symbols that will transform our culture for a viable future. This paper examines mysticism arising from the work of several contemporary visionary artists that inspires Kathy, as well as presenting her own method of sacred art practice, which is process-based, intuitive, and by that she means that she's not a studio-trained artist. Her art is created in ceremony and is a journey to the ecological self. She'll present the practice of visionary art and intuitive process painting as a method allowing for deep exploration of the ecological self, along with psychospiritual enrichment and healing. Using an autoethnographic methodology, she'll describe a particular sacred art journey that unfolded for her over several months, with focus on the work of the late great Jungian analyst and feminist scholar Betty Deschamps-Metter, whose texts provide a map to uncover the meaning of the symbols and images that emerge intuitively in her painting. Her painting journey taught her a lot about embracing light and shadow, with the recognition that it is the dance that many people may make, moving towards more conscious attunement with our own awakening as a soul and with the natural cycles. Metter's text offered a psychospiritual map towards living a more balanced life that consciously included her many psychospiritual descent journeys with compassion and with more understanding of these dynamics in the culture and natural cycles of life. Hi, Kathy. Welcome.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my presentation is something I created in a class with Stefan this past semester. It's an advanced PhD seminar on comparative mysticism. And So I'd like to just start with a little invocation from a few words from John Seed, deep ecologist. We ask for the presence of the spirit of Gaia and pray that the breath of life continues to caress this planet home. May we all awaken to our true and only nature, none other than the nature of Gaia, this living planet Earth. So John Seed, Joanna Macy, Pat Fleming, and Arne Naas wrote a book titled Thinking Like a Mountain Towards a Council of All Beings in the 70s. And I came upon this book 30 years ago, and it has been my inspiration ever since. And I'm inspired by this notion of the ecological self, which is a term that was coined by Norwegian philosopher Arne Naas. He called for an expansion of our notion of the individual self to the self, the ecological self. And Australian activist John Seed expressed his understanding of the ecological self within the context of his environmental work, stating, I try to remember it is not me trying to protect the rainforest, rather I am part of the rainforest protecting itself. I am that part of the rainforest recently emerged into human thinking. So this is about going beyond the anthropocentrism where humans were seen as a pinnacle of creation. We're really just one of many species, of course, embedded in this planet. And Joanna Macy calls it the greening of the self. And she says the greening of the self helps us to re-inhabit time and own our story as life on Earth. We were present from the start in the rains that streamed down on this still molten planet and in the primordial seas. So my journey with sacred art really began in the early 90s when I traveled to Santa Fe, and I was very moved by the art of Georgia O'Keeffe. This is one of her paintings on the right. And this is another painting of hers that I like very much. And a quote from Georgia O'Keeffe that I think relates to this idea of the ecological self is, she said, it is to live with a refined attention to detail, the flowers of the season, the sound of water poured onto stone, the time at which evening turns to dusk, not because these things will enlarge the self, but because they bring our lives into harmony with that which transcends the self. And I was very fortunate in 1994 in Santa Fe to meet my spiritual teacher of many years, Leslie Temple Thurston. She herself is an artist and a mystic. She's retired from teaching right now. She's from South Africa originally, but these are two of her paintings that you can see, Horus and the Earth Grid on the left and the pyramid on the right. Leslie was the one that encouraged her students, myself included, to begin a practice of process painting. And I'll speak more about that, but this is a quote from, I won't read the whole thing, but Mirabai Starr wrote this beautiful book titled Wild Mercy, Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics. And she says a miraculous event unfolds when we throw the lead of our personal story into the transformative flames of creativity. or hardship is transmuted into something golden. With that gold, we heal ourselves and redeem the world. As with any spiritual practices, this creative alchemy requires a leap of faith. And when we show up to make art, we need to first get still enough to hear what wants to be expressed through us. And then we need to step out of the way and let it. So there is a vital connection between creativity and mysticism. This is another artist that has inspired me greatly. She is a Canadian visionary artist. Her name is Autumn Sky Morrison, and she says we realize that art is not born of us, but through us. And in this understanding, we are humbled yet profoundly empowered. Each creation is an offering, a reflection of ourselves and humanity, a celebration of evolving consciousness, an opportunity for healing and deepening, a vision of a brighter future now. And let's see here. This painting of Autumn Sky Morrison is one that I love very much. And when I began teaching undergraduate eco-psychology classes in 2014 at another university, I used this image a lot as I felt it was a beautiful, inspiring representation of the ecological self. And I had a quite significant miracle occur after I was using this image in my classes. It turned out that my stepbrother lives quite close to where Autumn Sky Morrison lives up in Canada, in a place called Powell River up on the Sunshine Coast in British Columbia. And my stepbrother, Glenn, loves art, and he actually had a couple of Autumn Sky Morrison's paintings. And I received an email from her, and she said, your brother would like you to pick out a print from my art shop, and I will send it to you. And I was like, wow, that's a wonderful gift. And then a few days later, she wrote me back and she said, by the way, Glenn has purchased you the original painting. And so I actually own this miraculous painting. It's the most, my prized possession. Lives in my dining room. You can see that picture. My little cat is on the chair below it. So I get to live with this painting in my home for the past 5 years. So about process painting, it's the equivalent of journal writing, as it says in my abstract. I am not a studio-trained artist. I never went to school for art. Leslie Temple Thurston is the one who recommended to us 25 years ago that we start a practice of process painting. And so process painting makes you sensitive and alert to the habit of judging. And it's a great way to disarm the inner critic because you can't make any mistakes. So my sacred art journeys practice, it's intuitive. There's no right way to do it. The soul is given freedom and allowed to emerge in works without judgment, without critical corrections from others. You just follow the inner flow to determine what colors, what brush strokes feel appropriate in the moment. And surprises are welcome. And I say every painting is a prayer. So I never set out with an intention of like, I don't draw composition or anything like that. It's just saying a prayer for maybe what I'm working on personally. And I was fortunate during my master's studies to go to Greece on a pilgrimage with Marguerite Rigoglio. So she did her PhD at CIIS, and she was one of my teachers in my master's in women's spirituality program. And she and I together went to Greece in the summer of 2012. That's the Athena temple on the left, and that's the temple at the up in Delphi on the right. And when I came home from that trip, I created a process painting, which you can see on the left. And the instruction with process painting is to, to put it, don't try and decipher what it is, put it away. So I had put this painting, I had created it after coming back from Greece, I put it away. And then when I was reading one of our texts 6 months later, one of our texts on the ancient Sumerian goddess Inanna, I recognized certain symbols that were in that painting. And I went and got the painting, and I was astonished to see the parallels that Betty DeJong made, her Jungian analyst, wrote about in her book when she had a dream of the goddess Inanna, and she had dreamed of, certain symbols that were there, and it resonated for me with my painting, and so I titled this painting Inanna. And these are the words of Betty DeJong Mader, and she goes out white sparked, radiant in the dark vault of evening sky, star steps in the street through the gate of wonder. And Betty DeJong Mader has some wonderful quotes. I won't go into all of them here, but as she says, we have to be willing to uncurse the dark, to look into the face of the dark, when she's talking about the personal shadow with expectation and humility. So this is my painting, Emergence. This is, we'll go back, this is Queendom Come. This painting was created with an intention of doing some healing work around mothers and daughters. This painting, Archangel, there's kind of a story behind this one. I created this painting to heal another painting. So this is Magdalene's. And none of this would have been possible without my deep connection to the beautiful island, Hawaiian island, the Garden Isle, Kauai. The image on the left is taken at the Hindu monastery. It's a Shiva temple there, and we always go to pujas there and pilgrimages. Kauai has been my muse and my teacher of the ecological self. And this is a painting, Freedom, which Kauai was in the process of having some terrific rains one year, a couple of years ago. And while all of this was taking place on the island, I was here in Portland, feeling the island very much, and this painting emerged. This is Rainbow Jaguar. This painting is connected to Jonathan Kay, our own Jonathan Kay, who led us in a beautiful sonic ritual journey of sacred North Indian raga music. And I was feeling the ecological self as he led us through this journey, and this painting, Grace, emerged out of that. So thank you, Jonathan. I always think of you in this painting. This painting, Cascadia, was related to a class I was taking in terrapsychology. I was connecting with the Cascadia bioregion where I live, and this painting emerged. This painting, Sanctuary, I feel a connection with the goddess Isis and with Kuan Yin and other sacred divine figures, and a lot of things were kind of coming together in this painting. And I've been fortunate to have invitations to some exhibitions. So this is two of my paintings in an exhibition titled Future, which was in Italy, and a couple other exhibitions at a gallery in Milan. And, you know, I never set out with this practice to try and get representation, but I was contacted. I just put my art up on Instagram, and people have contacted me about it. 4 of my paintings, physical paintings, are in Spain. 2 of them, Red Hills and Magdalenes, were in the Luxembourg exhibition a couple of years ago. Couple of others, Emergence and Queendom Come, have been in other exhibitions. And 5 paintings were seen in the Paris art show earlier this year. And let's see here. I like this quote from Janine Marie Hogan. She's a writer, beautiful writer, and she says, this is from her dissertation, which was done at CIIS in 2015. She says, when the world comes alive to us in all its forms and voices, we are more permeable to the planetary psyche, pressing itself into our awareness and expression, more permeable to enactments of planetary imagination. And this painting, Spirit of Jamaica. Jamaica is the old name for my island home of Jamaica. And then
Kathy, you have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
2.5 minutes.
So a new direction came in for my art. I started doing these mixed media as I contemplated the comparative mysticism work. So this is Sleeping Giant Dream Time. This is Venus is Risen. So these are all from a series now that I titled Kawaii Dream Time. This is Beneath the Surface. This is Where You're Going. And I like this quote from Bill Duvall. He says, a community with appropriate rituals, social mentors, languages, art forms, and methods of education can facilitate exploration of the ecological self. And this is my little equation: nature plus art equals joy plus resilience. And I will leave you with this, these questions from the late psychologist Rollo May. He says, what if imagination and art are not frosting at all, but the fountainhead of human experience? What if our logic and science derive from art forms and are fundamentally dependent on them, rather than art being merely a decoration for our work when science and logic have produced it? So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So beautiful. Such beautiful paintings. Thank you for sharing your process. And so great to hear that human people and other than human peoples have, nourished that. So I'm curious, Jonathan, how are we doing with time? Just to gauge.
Thanks for asking. I mean, we got off to a little bit of a later start. That's my fault. I take responsibility. So I'm going to ask if we can go maybe 10 minutes over our allotted time today, and then maybe move the next session back 15 minutes. So we would start the next session at the top of the hour. But why don't we do that? Adrian, why don't you respond as you wanted to, and then we can open up for maybe 10 minutes of questions, and then we'll have a break till the top of the hour.
Perfect. Yes, I can also be brief and just have more time for people to chime in. So I would love for some cross-pollination between presentations and the members here, student colleagues, and so on. So yeah, I'm nourished by the 3 presentations. I love them, and I have a few things to say about them, just in terms of echoing or resonating with some of the ideas and wondering directions of moving forward, of deepening in your own studies and your reflections and spiritual practices and so on. So something that so I'm just going to clump a little bit of the ideas together given the time that we have. But we started off with, it reminded me of this holy trinity of Satish Kumar, of society, soul, and soul, and how this multidimensional approach to our connection to the living earth, in particular, agriculture, and that has so been, I guess, in some respects, not necessarily demonized, but pointed at one of the main causes of our disconnection from the earth, from the living earth, actually, the passage from nomadic cultures to sedentarism and all of the repercussions that had about 10,000 years ago all the way to now. And so this revival or reweaving of our intimacy with the other than human world by way of agriculture, I do feel that it's of paramount importance, just because of food. That's what sustains our being. And of course, it's so interesting to bring into the equation the many layers of both the human and of the food and our relation amongst the diet, and so the subtle dimensions of food and our nourishment that we derive from it. I feel that those are just often go bypass us, and so I feel that the rescuing that from an integral lens, as you were pointing at, Anshul, and this breaking through the duality of nature and culture and inviting and invoking this emergence of this integral mode of consciousness around food as the center and the altar, and food production and its repercussions, and use that as an organizing idea for who we are in the world and how we shape our lives and our habits. I do feel that that's such a beautiful way of moving toward the evolution of consciousness. So I was inspired by that, Anshul, thank you. And the next 2 presentations, I'm going to share a couple of things about how I see art as a means into the deep unconscious, into the ecological unconscious, into the what some people call green mysticism, of going beyond the individualized sense of self, the greening of the self, as Kathy was putting it, Joanna Macy's work. And so I made a lot of notes about Hemlata's and everyone's presentation, but I was very curious to hear more about the role of imagination, for example, in metaphor and symbol. As Hemlata, you said something in your presentation that was very evocative for me, like how do we come about shifting our perspective rather than us seeing as the active observer onto a sort of quasi-death context, i.e. landscape, as to tapping into this depth currents where for us to be the seen. How do we create that more reciprocal engagement? And well, you provided some answers to that by way of tapping into the nature archetype and invoking a sense of the image and imagination that goes with it. And yeah, I thought you did a beautiful task in amplifying that connection, exploring that from your own experience and yourself. And I feel that that dance of masculine and feminine energies and many other things can come into and that grassy meadow, come into play and come into that paradoxical duality of, again, humans and nature can be not necessarily resolved, but provided a wider context out of which more harmonious relations can emerge. And so, of course, the last thing I want to share about that is that we in the West become so alienated from wild nature that in many respects it's basically the representation of the unconscious. Turning our gaze back into wild nature, for many of us, what that means, or partly, it's to come face to face with the deeper forces of the psyche, right there. So, and in Kathy's presentation, it became very evident to me how, by focusing our attention in our intimate and at the same time so undernourished connection with the other than human world, there's a innate sense of nourishment and spirituality that's primarily brought about by direct experience in the mystical sense, a transnoetic beyond the thinking mind into this vaster field of who we are, right? That some people call the ecological self. But I feel that the earth mysticism involved in art process and delving into the depths of our soul, like the poets would say, that's the soul is where the inner and the outer world meet. That realization comes alive, or came alive, at least for me, in your paintings, Kathy, and also in your artistic expressions, Hemlata. So I am inspired and happy that this is happening, in our community. And I look forward, just to end my thoughts here, I look forward to seeing and witnessing how your work and your thoughts are going to evolve or keep evolving, and how, even more curious, how, by hearing each other, we inspire each other, and that may influence our own ideas and thoughts about what we're doing. Because I can see the three presentations very complementary, and just that highlight different aspects of the same mystery of who we are, and the embryonic potentials that we have as human beings, and how that can be refined and brought about by a more conscious engagement with the living earth, because she, her, thou, it, in many respects provides the template. It's kind of like the pathway and the destination already there. It's a symbol of the wholeness of humanity, the planet itself, right? So how do we go about that? By way of art, by way of food, by way of, consciously joining the bigger dance of the planet, and allow for that mystery to inform who we are and shape our thoughts and feelings and our service, really. So I think that's enough. Thanks for listening. So I'm curious now if anybody has some reflections, thoughts, concerns about the presentations, or something that is brewing inside you and wants to be voiced, and is very much welcome. We need the voices. Yeah. Jean, Michelle, and then Alexander.
Should I start? Yes, I have a question for Anshul. I'm interested in agriculture and astrology. I know that there is a cycle that the planets influence whatever you plant, and I was wondering what is your experience with this, your personal experience between, you know, the connection between the stars and the soil.
Hi, Jean-Michel. There's something called biodynamic farming, which is coming from Rudolf Steiner, and they pay a lot of emphasis to the movement of the stars and the planetary sort of conjunctions in farming and their impact on the soil, on the seeds. I have studied it a bit and I've experimented a little bit, but it's a bit complicated. To be honest, especially on a working farm. There are many farms who do it, and farmers who swear by it. It works really well. But in my experience, I found it really challenging because you're also dealing with several. Farming is very complicated in the sense there are so many variables, right? It's the rain and the temperature and your own life. So you're just always sort of running around trying to get into the season and get into that window. And when you add another complexity of stars and planets and that sort of timing, it's a bit more challenging. So I have not been able to do it, to be honest, but I would love to. I would like to have some more people who are interested in it, and then we follow that. But people do it, and you should read about biodynamic farming.
Yeah, I know. I know it. I just wanted to know your experience if you like it as well.
Thank you. That's great. Alexander?
Yeah, thank you. I will have two questions to Hema. First of all, thank you so much for this great presentation. I really enjoy it. And one short question, are you going to publish this article somewhere? Because I would like to use for my research. It's the first question.
We can talk about it, Alex. I don't have not thought about it. This is the first time I'm presenting it.
You should thinking about publish. And the second question, I'm interested myself in shadow work. So when you work with archetype of landscape and earth and images of environment, did you consider shadow aspect, and what was it for you? Thank you.
Yes, Alex, thank you for that question. I think the shadow comes up in the introspection and reflection phase. And I think, like Hume said, that if we don't allow the mind to interfere, then the messages of the image will come out clearly. And when that comes, then there's I don't know if I read this in my article here, but there is this work that Hume has written where he says that, the image will not always bring up good things and beautiful things about you, right? It's also going to bring up chaotic and things which you may not be ready to meet. And I think that is what he meant. That is the shadow that he meant. And yes, it does come up personally for me also. And in these set of images also, I think when the shadow self is not tapping into the feminine, and so when you are in the masculine energy, then the shadow side of it is probably what I experienced was a neglect, and not having the time to pause would also mean not a lack of self-care. So all these things, I think, also come up when an image comes up. So yes. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Hemata and Alex, for the questions. Alex Stein, you have a question, comment?
Yeah, so thanks everybody so much. These are beautiful presentations. One thing that I've been contemplating and that just came up for me in the presentations is just what do you think it is in us? And I'm just kind of generally directing this to everybody. What is it in us that feels ourselves to not be nature? I sometimes think of humans almost like beavers who just can't stop building dams, and we see dams everywhere, right? And dams, and just building dams, and we live in this world of beaver dams that we built for ourselves, and we consider that to not be nature itself. And so, because I'm interested, and I'm going to be talking later about the way how we imagine things at a fundamental level kind of structures our sense of reality. What might change for us when we start to see even the most, squalid, industrial, denuded, terrible place, which, like I'm sure like many of us, like it makes me sick to be in a place like that. When we see that, in fact, as a result of a natural process working through us, and how might that change our attitude to come back into alignment? So rather than an against kind of thing, a kind of flowing through into a new harmony, sort of a thing. So just wonder if anybody's got any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Alex. I'm curious. Anshul, Kathy, Hemlata, you wanna maybe chime in? You didn't have to, but if you have some ideas, please.
Yeah, maybe just I could respond briefly to that, Alex. Thank you for the question. I guess it's very difficult when you're so removed from that natural connection. It's for example, for a kid growing up in a city today, and I'll take the example of food again. You ask them where milk comes from, they will say supermarket. Or where where an orange comes from, they will say a shop, a market. So from that point of view, even if the environment of the supermarket, the roads, the city is seen as a natural landscape, there's still no connection of what led to that. So we've sort of lost that memory of, where is it coming from? We've disconnected from there. And I guess for somebody who has that information or has that connection to know that industries were actually built for a certain reason by somebody in so and so way, that is probably possible. But when we take that as a reality in itself, as the starting point of our reality, then it's very difficult to sort of go back and see how does it connect to our natural selves. That's just my thought on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree and resonate with that. I think it's just an interesting thing to think about. So thank you.
Wonderful. I'm curious. I see your hand, Jean Michelle. I'm curious if someone else has a question that hasn't chimed in. Now would be the time, because I think we're pretty close to ending. And then if not, we'll go back to, David.
I just want to not so much a question, but just a comment on the experience of being a listener. And I thought all three of you, what I found was really powerful was your use of images, Anshul, just the simple line drawings, and sometimes it was just a dot or a series of dots, and then Hema and Kathy both bringing in your own images, and it just made me think about how different ways, like how can I communicate better? How do I, whether it's bringing across an idea or a concept in a way that someone can understand. And what I appreciate about the images too, and it's just there's an ambiguity to them. So there was something for me to have to interpret. So there was a chance in listening to hearing your all's experiences and ideas, but there's also, you gave me a space to kind of reflect on how that might show up for me. So I just wanted to say, thank you for that.
Thank you, David. I echo that. Yes.
Just one quick thing before we end, but I loved how all the presentations, everybody was really, I felt that it was really the ideas that were presented, especially, and like I love arts-based research. Being a practitioner myself, I've experienced that power, but really how our responsibility as a scholar practitioner is really to be able to open one to the other, kind of like find ways, be creative in terms of how we're bridging that gap. And you know, it is interesting to think about, you know, Anshul, you said agriculture, and it just, in my mind, you just broke it up in a way. It's the culture of the earth, you know. And it's interesting because I felt that culture is something like that we've in the way in which we've inherited modernity and the systems of duality and things like that. It's like we're creating culture, or the human has a certain type of essence or being or something, where nature is around us, but we're not nature itself, you know. And so like that phrase natura naturalis from Spinoza, nature naturing, is very interesting because it's kind of like in pointing out there's not this radical divide, which everything is moving around us and we are the static thing that can order it according to our will, you know. And so even the idea of agriculture, what is that culture of the earth? How can we listen to it? And I just love how all the presentations are kind of opening to this kind of aporetic place where the self or the human has to kind of be, like Adrian, you said, it has to be open to feel that mystery and kind of step into the mystery and the unknown. And I just really loved how that came out in all of the presentations.
Beautiful. Jean-Michel, you put your hand down. You still want to chime in? Or
Yeah. I had a question for Hema regarding the archetype of nature, and what is your experience with this archetype? Because the mother archetype is also a devouring, has a nature as the mother archetype has a devouring, destructive nature as well as a nurturing one. So it's there is a dichotomy there, and just I wanted your comment on this.
I think, Jean-Michel, I'll try to say what I understand best is when I started with the quote, right? It said that the Hume's quote wherein, you know, nature must not win, but it cannot lose, right? So I think it's the way of and how we respond to nature and how we care for nature and how it then responds to us. So the reciprocity of how we engage, I think that is something. And when we say this, the nature is fierce, then I think it also goes back to, you know, if we take it a little back, what made it fierce, and then we will, when we see that, it will be a reflection on us, you know. So I feel the nurturing or the fierceness is we can take some onus of it.
Thank you, beautiful.
great. I think we're at time. Yeah. Thank you so much for you know, you being here, and for the community and the wisdom that's shared. I feel happy, nourished. So
thanks, Adrian. Yes, and thanks to all the panelists. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and just note that we are running 15 minutes later than our schedule. And I hope that's okay for everybody, but we'll start at the top of the hour with the last panel. So we'll see you all soon.